I could focus on them, or my director or my supervisor could focus on them, and the system looks at them so differently.
The idea is that we want people to be expanded and have capacity in their life to give and receive love, have the capacity in their life to hold joy and hard things, and capacity to navigate life fully, reaching their fullest potential.
If the building is your hope, if the building is your life reimagined, then the scaffolding are the little things that get you there. It's the next right thing. And if your body is made up of 80% water and all you're drinking is coffee, your scaffolding is at a massive deficit.
Welcome to the Rethreading Lives podcast, where we talk about how to take your threads of harm and through the rethreaded process, transform them into something that actually helps you reach your potential. We'll talk with different leaders in our city and our country and find out what they're doing. You'll walk away from listening to this podcast with useful insights and captivating stories on how you yourself can rethread your life and your business. I'm Kristin Keene, and this is the Rethreading Lives podcast. Welcome to today's podcast episode, where we have two amazing guests. We have two Rethreaded team members. We have Gloria Love, the Director of Holistic Services.
Yes, you got it.
Thank you. Good job. And Giselle, our Care Manager / social worker. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to have you guys go ahead and introduce yourself and tell a little bit more about what you do at Rethreaded.
Do you want to go first, or do you want me to go?
Go ahead.
Okay, I'll go ahead. So as Director of Holistic Services at Rethreaded, I have the joy and the challenge, sometimes equally at the same time, of creating, administrating, facilitating programmatic services for our ladies to ensure that they have the best possible options and choices to reclaim their lives. So I engage in grant writing, I engage in facilitation of the trainings that we've developed, I do logistical for externally facilitated trainings, and I try to have an ear and an eye in the life of Rethreaded to see what our ladies need, and then to go in the community and find those partnerships that are going to help our ladies reach their goals and just unlock the potential that they all have, whether they realize it or not.
And maybe our listeners want to know some facts about Gloria, is that she is an amazing fellow thrifter.
Yes. Power to the thrifting.
Amazing fellow. We might have been known to take stuff out of the Springfield trash together.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
Treasure Day.
Treasure Day.
Unashamedly, yes.
She's also adventurous, kayaks, bikes, and she is from Canada.
I am an expat from British Columbia, Canada. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And maybe a little bit of your background.
Yes. So I ended up in nonprofit world through spousal support, I guess you could say, in that my husband has worked in church world for over 30 years. And as a trained musician, I ended up being, his kind of extra bonus hire, in that I did a lot of church music and a lot of just managing teams and growing teams, and did that for a lot of years. And then we moved to the state of Michigan, to Lansing, Michigan, and I worked in the corporate world as an executive assistant. And at that time, I had this amazing opportunity to just watch an organization transform from not super great corporate culture into super healthy corporate culture. And I was so blessed to have a boss that basically said, you see the need, you figure out a way to meet the need, and I'll come alongside you and we'll change the company together. And so we instituted a lot of soft skills training that just allowed our company to grow and develop. And then fast forward to Jacksonville, I heard about Rethreaded sitting at my desk as an executive assistant, texted Miss Kristin Keene and said, I'm all in. Like, what can I do? And it took us a while to find the right seat for me. And here I am. And I'm trying to roll all of those life skills and life experiences into what our ladies need here. So it's a little bit of nonprofit / church world. It's a little bit of corporate culture management, and it's a lot of see a need, meet a need.
And Gloria came to Rethreaded. She started off as my assistant, and then the pandemic hit, and Rethreaded started making masks. And Gloria has another skill. She's also done sewing in factories before. So she, during the pandemic, then shifted to one of our lead mask sewers. And then as COVID went on, we knew that the assistant's position was not the best use of her skills. So then we moved Gloria into the holistic care coordinator, and it was a game changer for Rethreaded. So for the first time in our history, we had someone living, breathing for our women. So then we have Giselle here, who is the other game changer at Rethreaded. So I went on sabbatical, and I come back, and Giselle's there.
Surprise!
And everyone on staff is raving about Giselle. I mean, like, I heard about you. I talked to Jason and Nikki once on my sabbatical, and they're like, and then Giselle, she's amazing. In her first week, she made a bulletin board. And everyone has just been ecstatic. And then, so it was our second game changer, because now we have someone who's living, breathing care management. So why don't you talk about what you do at Rethreaded, and then give us a little bit about your background. And then I have some interesting facts about you.
So in my role, I have the privilege of walking with our ladies in their day-to-day, both at Rethreaded, but also in what's going on in their daily lives. And so we get to talk about anything short-term to anything long-term. And that can be in just basic logical goals, like getting their license back, buying a car, which is a huge milestone for them, all the way to like their fears around budgeting, or figuring out why Devo that morning kind of made them emotional, and helping them just kind of sit there with them and work through that, and be able to go back and continue on with their work. So I get to just walk with them, and that's been so much fun to see where they start off, especially in their first 90 days, and how with time and with community and with all of these things that we're trying to put in place at Rethreaded, they blossom and they flourish and they grow in different ways. A lot of times it can be surprising to see like what they're able to do. And so I'm kind of a problem solver, supporter, advocate, hype woman, anything that our ladies are going to need. Googler, a lot of Googling, how can we make things work? How can we break down these barriers? Who can we connect with? And so I get to work side by side with Gloria a lot too. Like, hey, we're really struggling in this area. What do you think? Who do you know? Who can we reach out to? She's done a really good job of building up a partnership with a lot of different resources in Jacksonville. So maintaining those, making use of those, and just helping ladies take it one step at a time to where they want to go to. So, yeah. And then a lot of the administrative work that comes along with that, that comes along with building a program and sustaining a program, and trying to figure out just like data collection and how do we hold the milestones and celebrate the milestones and report on milestones, and things like that. But yeah, so that's kind of, I do a lot of. And
then what's your background?
So I'm a social worker, so that's kind of my background educationally. But I've worked in a couple different areas. So I worked specifically with women in my schooling at the YWCA. So I got to work with women with a lot of different histories and different pasts, and be in the one-on-one setting with them and hear their stories. I've also been able to work in child welfare, so work with children and families in the foster care system once cases have gone and children have been removed from the home on a court level, and try to reunify with them. And then from there, I made my way to Rethreaded.
How did you find us again?
Well,
a friend said?
Well, before I even moved to Florida, my mother-in-law was already telling me about you guys, and was like, because she knew that my dream was to work with survivors of human trafficking. It's actually what got me into social work when I was kind of not knowing what to do. I had done psychology, but I was like, I don't know exactly the specific thing that I want to do. And I heard one day of a lady that worked with survivors of human trafficking, and the more I learned and the more I volunteered, This was in Virginia. The more I knew that's what I wanted to do, but I knew it was still so niche. You know, there's still not a lot of the services out there. And so she had told me about you guys, and when I reluctantly moved to Florida, which now I love it, but I wanted to make my way into Rethreaded, but I know jobs come very, they're very slim to come by. So it just wasn't the right time. And then on one Friday afternoon, I saw the post, and boy, my fingers have never typed faster. Even my husband heard me, and he's like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "I can't talk right now. I got to finish this cover letter."
And funny story, after we brought her in for an interview, I promptly got COVID. And I was so determined to get her in here that I was calling all her references with absolute like COVID face, getting all of that cleared, because I was bound and determined that as soon as I was back in the building, she was going to be in the building too.
Yes.
And so
Yeah.
I had some interesting phone calls like, "Excuse me while I cough in your face, but we have to do this now."
Yeah. And I think you were in Canada when I applied. So
Yes. And
you
so
both were gone.
We were both
and I
gone.
snuck
and
in.
I had my, HR, Nikki did our initial interview, and she was like, what questions do I ask? And so I gave her the questions that I wanted the answers to. And so, yeah, it was kind of like, we're getting this girl in here, whatever it takes.
Which I'm glad. And my interesting fact about Giselle is that she practices all her trauma-informed care on her dog child. And I love it. And we could probably do a whole episode where you could teach us what you're doing for your dog, and people would love it. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because your dog has like anxiety, right?
Yeah, she's a rescue, and she's a working dog, and I did not know what I was doing. So what I learned about parenting skills and working in relationship with people, I have tried to find a way to put in practice with my dog. And
I love it. We should talk about, we'll bring the dog up, because I'm sure we'll have an example that we need.
Yeah.
Okay, this is always the hardest part of the episode for me, is to get it started and to dive in to the topic. Because these are I don't have favorites on staff. These are the two women on our staff that hold our women the closest, like hold space for our women to heal. And we seek to put the Rethreaded process into how we run our business, how we run our programs. We seek to be trauma informed. We seek to be a healing centered workplace, which is not, I'm learning more and more as I get out of my Rethreaded bubble, not the norm, or not the norm with businesses. But maybe you can help people understand and like paint a picture, because both of you have had experiences outside of Rethreaded. And then you've had experiences inside where together we're trying to build something that's kind of different. So the Rethreaded process involves time, purpose, like knowing what you bring to the table, vision, believing things that can change, community, we go with you, building trust, openness, which involves the willingness to see your thread, be honest about your thread, and time we've been defining as the ability to sit with your thread and tolerate it. So if you guys, maybe you could start off by saying in your own words, this is what our healing center workplace looks like, and then maybe compare it to something that like people who are not in that could understand. Like, I worked here, this was the culture at Rethreaded, this is what we're trying to do differently to facilitate people, giving the people the potential to reach their potential. That was a long question.
That's a long question.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's okay.
Yeah.
Is that a go first look?
Go ahead.
Lead the way, Gloria.
So I think depending on what cultural environment you are in, there are varying degrees of willingness to address everybody's healing process. And I think if I was to make gross overgeneralizations, and I fully understand they're gross overgeneralizations, it would be that I think having come from corporate world, or having come from more surface relationships in a quote unquote professional space. I think there's a desire at times to say, let's just be nice enough to each other that we can all get along, we'll minimize the conflict, and everybody will be reasonably happy enough. And so that tells us that just generally we're not going to have that timepiece where we're going to sit and hold something that is going to create discomfort. I think where I see the difference at Rethreaded is we are coming into Rethreaded. We walk into the doors in the morning knowing that discomfort is there. And there is no physical, emotional, spiritual way to pretend it doesn't exist. And so rather than kind of walk around it and smile at it, we wade into it. And we say, it's a part of who we are. And it is what it is. And just because it is what it is now doesn't mean that it has to be that in the future. And we hold hope for those moments that Giselle talked about where a woman sees herself doing something more than what she thought she could, where she is surprised by the steps that she can take. And so that those surprises and that joy doesn't come by ignoring or being nice enough. It comes by spending the time and walking through the deep waters and saying, it's here, it's real, and it's temporary. And if we can put all of those other pieces in place, then a woman hopefully will have the space to see her life come back. And that's why we get up in the morning, because we believe that there's hope that it comes back.
And that, what I'm finding is that Rethreaded as an organization, if you're applying the Rethreaded process to us organizationally, one of our biggest advantages is everyone, survivor or non-survivor, we have such a purpose. Like, we can wake up in the morning and know when we go to work it matters, which I think is one of the gifts of what we do. And I find that that's not also normal in business. A lot of people don't get this deep sense of purpose that we get to experience at work. What are your thoughts initially on this, on contrasting from some of your different experiences?
Well, I think the beautiful thing about Rethreaded is that when we see that wheel that you're talking about with the Rethreaded process, that's surrounding a person. It's not surrounding Rethreaded, it's surrounding each person. And so we have the privilege and we're intentional about being person-centered. And so we get to go in and we get to pray for the next woman that comes to Rethreaded. We're not praying that we get more employees. Like, we're being really specific about each individual person and where they are in needing parts of that sphere, the how big and how how wide their sphere is yet, and where their readiness for changes and where their needs are and things like that. And I think that is what makes the world of a difference, is to be able to look at the person and speak to them, be able to look at that person and work with them on their skills and where their needs are, and sit with them in the hard moments and bring awareness to some of the hard moments that are for that person. I know in working specifically like in child welfare, I had this weird vision of the contrast of the organization piece, where my director did a really good job of coming into the room when we were having a really hard day and have conversations with us, but then also seeing it on the systemic level. That was just like, essentially, you know, these are the things that you need to do. These are the things that we want you to do. And not having the ability to have the time or have the conversation or have the focus on the specific people. And that was a really hard place to be in, because it was like, I felt like I mattered as a worker, and then I felt like I didn't 100% necessarily feel like I mattered. And then I felt the same way, like with the people that I was working with and representing, I could focus on them, or my director or my supervisor could focus on them, and the system looks at them so differently. And I think that's a really hard thing when organizations and companies and businesses grow, is they think that what they need to do is good enough, like what you're talking about. They have to find like this threshold, like where do the two things meet, where we can keep everyone happy and feeling good and know that they matter, but be as efficient or be as profitable or be as whatever it is that their goals are. And that's when you start to lose things. And I think that where we're trying to do as we're growing and as we're trying to be sustainable is keep that person in the center, and keep focusing on those 5 things. And I think time is one of the most like privileged things that we can put on that sphere, because a lot of other places don't have that. You know, if you're in a 30-day program, you're in a 30-day program. And so there are some things that we are able to do that other places aren't necessarily able to do. But I think that being able to be person-centered and intentional on the specific individual has been making the world of a difference.
So I was going to add one thing.
Please.
I also think because historically, and we can speak historically because Rethreaded is now 11, almost 12 years old, we went through a historical like evolution of how we viewed that time. And we put some parameters around it at one point, and then we broadened the parameters because we saw the need. And I think that's the thing that is really key to Rethreaded, is that when we see something as a person-centered need, we're willing to change the process in order to meet that person-centered need. And yes, it's the need of the survivor, but it's also the need of the members of the organization. And I think we've had so many discussions recently about how can we support every person at Rethreaded, because we know that we succeed or fail together. And there's not an us and them. When we sit down at a meal together, there's no us and them. There's us. Just us. When we walk together, there's just us. When we work outside in the yard, there's just us. All of us have cleaned a toilet before. It's just us. And I think that is an incredibly powerful component that we walk out in order to value that time and make that time work for everybody. Because if it works for one person but doesn't work for another person, that's going to be imbalanced, right? It's going to have this weirdness to it. And so it's got to work for all of us, right?
Which is so funny. Sorry. The previous guest I had on, we talked about how we had like a 2-hour discussion on whether or not to wear jeans.
Wow.
And I mean, just like, we got to make it work for everybody. And it's like some things are so hard to make it work for. Anyways, off topic. So this is what I want to talk about. And keep going on the thoughts that you're going. Our goal, if this is our sphere, so for those of you listening, I have my toy, one of those spheres that collapses inwards or expands. And so the idea is that we want people to be expanded and have capacity in their life to give and receive love, have the capacity in their life to hold joy and hard things, and capacity to navigate life fully, reaching their fullest potential. When a woman comes to Rethreaded, this is about her capacity. And usually in this capacity, she can only usually hold distrust, shame, anger. So as we introduce each element, the idea is it expands and they work together. Let's go back. I mean, everyone has mentioned time so far, which I honestly think is like, even when I talk to business owners who are not healing centered or whatever, time is still their biggest struggle. So maybe can you guys share a story of time? Like, how does time, like, we are a 3 to 5 year program, very exactly what you're saying. It's very different. It is a privilege that Rethreaded, and a gift that we get to have 3 to 5 years with our ladies walking side by side. Not a normal nonprofit either. Do you guys have stories and anecdotes that you can talk about this power of time in the lives of healing and through business and all that?
One of my favorite examples of this is there's been a few ladies that if I bring up finances and budgeting, very quickly, I've had one just be like, our time here has been fun, and like walks out of my office,
out of the room.
And they're like, not today. And okay.
What is it? Like, what's happening? Why? Because most people won't understand why are women, like, why would a woman react like that to finance and budgeting class?
So relationship with money is, well, it's a very individualized thing for everybody. But when you're coming from a past where money has either been used against you, has been used to define you, has been used as your only means of consistency, there's kind of this, if I face the money piece, like the actual numbers piece, I'm facing some of that story. And that can be difficult for some of our ladies. Some of them have never been able to make the decisions, and so they might not have the confidence in making the decisions in themselves. They might not be giving themselves the permission still. And that's, I think, where the time comes in, and the community. Because a lot of times, if no one is saying it's okay once you're ready, they might not ever necessarily believe that it will be okay. And so that's some reasons why they might go out of my room. I've had one lady where I've handed the budget and I was like, have you been thinking about your finances? And you could just see the freeze in her face, because money was tied to a hard relationship with her sister, and it was tied to her mother's passing. And knowing was scary, because if she knew that she didn't have money, that meant that she now had to think about other things. Or if she knew she had money, now she might go into some like old habits and spend the money, and just Amazon is really easy, or online shopping, or go to a store. And so those are some of the reasons why, especially in the beginning, money can be difficult to talk about and difficult to face. And so I've had a number of women that bringing up budgeting, bringing up finances, kind of have some sort of response. But what's really amazing is over time, I've tried to bring some playfulness into it and just say, hey, have you thought about it? And then I might get the same, like, oh, no. Okay, we're done. And leave again. But over time, I've had one lady, I gave her the budget sheet and didn't talk about it again. And 2 months later, she brought the sheet back into my office and she was ready. And she acknowledged that she was going to have to take it step by step and she needed somebody to go with her. There's one lady that now is obsessed with her budget app and like opens it and just stares at it and like looks at it. And so, yeah, so it's just really amazing to see that transformation on something like budgeting, like finances, that some of us, some people out there just do without thinking about, or that learn as a young child or through college or whatever, and don't understand how hard that it could be to get to that point. And then to see our ladies just go from like, nope, not today, not doing this, our time's done, to, okay, how can I learn? How can I do this better? Look at me saving all this money, and it's just snowballs. It snowballs into a positive relationship with money.
And it's like, it's a space issue. It's a space issue, right?
It is a space issue, and it's a space issue because we do not have space and capacity in our brains and bodies when we are in fear. So fear closes us up. And we will not be able to open up physiologically until we feel safe. And if you have had a traumatic experience, like, for example, put it into something that really real that people can understand. Say you're driving to work and somebody cuts you off and it is really tight, like they really cut you off, and your heart races and your breathing changes and you might say a few words to your windshield. That is a fight or flight response. And it takes about 20 minutes for that cortisol fight or flight response hormone to come down in your body. Think about what our women have gone through, and that they've lived in fight or flight, sometimes for years, to a degree that most of us can never imagine. Coming down from that fight or flight response can take a massive amount of time, and it's not the same for every woman. So to be able to give a woman time to be able to feel safe enough that she can face the hard conversation or the hard processing about something like budgeting, or parenting or writing a resume or sitting in a mock interview or doing grocery shopping, not impulsively. Those are things that take felt safety. And if you have that closed up sphere, you need that time in order for even your body chemicals to change and realign, because your brain does not have the capacity to learn when those body chemicals that have you in fight, flight, freeze are coursing through your body. Our brains just shut down because we're trying to just cope with what's the next threat or what's the current threat. We have to let that threat calm down. We have to address it in ways of kindness and playfulness and time in order to allow a woman to be able to say, oh, something different is actually possible. And once we get a woman into that space through kindness and time, and she can believe that something is possible, then she can believe that her finances could be controlled and that she's actually the person to control it. Or all of those other things that we just listed. It's possible to experience it. It's possible to do something that is really hard and not have it take you out. And then that sphere starts to open up, and it's beautiful.
And you kind of just pulled in the vision. I mean, the vision that things can change. Mm-hmm. Basically hope. And I remember you told me this story, just that so a lot of our women have a hard time getting access to housing and affordable housing. And you said that like a woman was living on a porch. Like one of our employees was like living on a porch, and she's like, well, it's better than what I came from. Mm-hmm. So like not having even capacity within herself to imagine that she does not have to stay on a porch because it's better than where she came from. Mm-hmm. And how she didn't yet have a vision of how different things could be.
Yeah. We just had a conversation in 90-day training. We're about to wrap up 90-day training. We did critical thinking, and we talked about the emotions that come upon us as we need to make decisions, and learning how to recognize the emotion and separate the emotion from the decision-making process. And we talked about housing, and we talked about how emotional that process is, and how we have to recognize the emotion and see it and be okay with it in order to not let it run us into making decisions, because we know from care management that sometimes there's potentially a housing option that comes to a woman, but it's really not a good choice. But like you said, it might be better than the porch. Mm-hmm. But we want them to believe that there's so much more out there, and utilize the skills and the tools and the support that they have through Rethreaded to be able to walk through that process. And again, it doesn't have to take you out. Whereas before it would take somebody out. And we're just done seeing our beautiful women in Jacksonville getting taken out. We're done.
I know when we went to that apartment, so we're working with some apartments to get our women, these particular apartments offer mixed income housing. So it's safe, it's clean, it's beautiful, there's a gym, there's a common room, there's cameras everywhere, it locks automatically.
It looks like a spa.
Ooh. It's clean. Mm-hmm. And I don't know why for me, that in that moment, it was probably the first time that I was like, we have to prepare our women to be able to go into that, because it takes time mm-hmm. to enter into that. And I hate it because, I think that's where I put the pressure on the time that like, mm-hmm. or people don't understand the journey of our women sometimes. Why can't you just, give her a place to live, get her a job, she's fine, she'll be fine. And I think about if you put a woman in that position when she's 6 months in compared when she's 3 years in, the difference that will make in her life. And she'll actually be able to receive the gift and stay in that apartment long term.
Because you have to believe that you are worthy of good things in order to work through the stuff that it takes you to get you to the good things. And if you don't believe that about yourself, I mean, think about how many people who would potentially be listening to this who would rate themselves low on a trauma scale, who are dealing with their own sense of unworthiness. Now multiply that by about 2,000 based on what our women have faced. And to walk into an apartment like that, they would turn around and walk out because they would say, there's no way I am worthy of this. I can't possibly be worthy of this. And especially if they walk into it in their 90 days, in their first 6 months, and 3 years in, they still might be feeling that. I mean, we see that on a regular basis, that even at 3 years, there's a sense of, well, I'm not good enough for that. Well, who told you you're not good enough for that? And we have to work through and give time. And we have to, our women have to get to that place by themselves too. Like, we can't do that for somebody. We can only provide the space for somebody to potentially grab that thought and let it take root in their heart.
I had a conversation. I've been trying to ask our ladies what their long-term housing goals are and have kind of an idea of what their thought process is. And one of our ladies that's been with us for a little bit longer, when I had approached about maybe buying a home or going through the different home buying options, it was just a quick, like, no, I don't think I'll be able to do that once she completes this program. And so I was like, oh, okay, if you think that you can't. And then I asked her again, and I was like, well, what do you actually think about this program? Like, do you think you wouldn't be able to do it, or do you not want to? And she was like, well, I don't think I could do it. And I was like, well, can we just talk about it for a little bit? And we kind of went through the logistics of it, and she 100% could do it. But it was that doubt that even with time, even with community, can still creep in. And it was beautiful to see her face, like, as we were talking through. I was like, yeah, like, I believe you can do it. Like, after seeing this, do you believe you can do it? She's like, yeah, I think I can do it. I was like, all right, let's do it. And she was like, okay. And so it's just like wonderful to see that, just that change in the moment, which doesn't happen often. But see her take ownership of, like, yeah, I can do it, like, take the assistance, and actually feel and verbalize that she deserves to be able to do that she deserves to have her own place and to care for her family. And that's her goal. That's her goal on the cloud in my office. And, and we're going to make it do it. We're going to make it. So yeah. Anyways.
And I think we're starting to touch on something that's super important for somebody in a recovery system. And it's, I have all these things that I want to do. And we see this as new hires come in. They come into Giselle's office and they have, like, an absolute dump of all the things that they want to accomplish, whether they believe that they can do them or not. And so one of the things that I think we've started saying probably in the last, like, 3 or 4 years at Rethreaded, one of our values is do the right thing. Well, we added next in there. Just do the next right thing. Show up to work on time. Do the things on your to-do list at work. Just do the next right thing. Looking at the housing process, it is daunting, and it's probably going to take the majority of our women, if they agree to enter into the process, a good year to get all the steps in place to be able to do that. So just do the next right thing. And I think that's incredibly powerful in this recovery process and the rethreading process is, don't look at all of the things that have to be done or the things that you wish you could wave a magic wand and see them be different. Just do the next right thing. Just show up to your own life today. Just show up to your own life tomorrow and trust that the todays and the tomorrows are going to add up to what you really were made to be.
The last conversation I had on the podcast, I asked the person, like, what do you struggle with? Like, what happens? I said, what do you struggle with most in the Rethreaded process? And he's like, well, right now I think it's my purpose. And he's in his 50s, going through this transition, whatever. And I was like, what does it look like? What does that look like in your life when you're doubting your purpose? And he's like, it's a lot of Netflix. It's a lot of, like, lethargic behavior and
numbing process.
Yeah. Right. And I mean, like, whoever's listening to this can in some level relate to their healing process, because we've all gone through hard things, and all, have to go through some kind of healing in our process. Can you walk us through a little bit about why you have stuffed animals, why we have glitter bottles, and maybe get down to like, I feel like what we've learned about hydration, sleep, eat. I mean, all those are just very practical things that everybody needs. And like sometimes you can solve problems through these very practical things. So maybe you guys can walk us through a little bit. I mean, Gloria became known for having us drink water, but it caused a huge cultural shift in our company. Maybe just let's start with water.
Water is kind of my soapbox platform because when I first was exposed to the trust-based relational intervention training and the trauma-informed training, it wasn't about change everything. It was find the little things that actually do make a difference. And they talk about scaffolding. And you think about a scaffold as the structure that you build a building. If the building is your hope, if the building is your life reimagined, then the scaffolding are the little things that get you there. It's the next right thing. And if your body is made up of 80% water and all you're drinking is coffee, your scaffolding is at a massive deficit. The more we dig into the statistics about your brain and what your brain needs to work and your decision-making processes and how that is all influenced ultimately by the amount of water you have in your body at any one given time, the amount of appropriate nutrients that your body has for fuel, the amount of movement that you've engaged in during the day, the amount of sleep that you've had at night. These are all little tiny pieces that scaffold us into our best self today. And if our best self today allows us to do that next right thing, then we have another piece. We're putting another piece in the scaffolding that's going to allow us to build that functional home of hope that we want for our future. We also have delved into sensory needs. We talk about sensory needs a lot from the standpoint of our parenting class and how children have sensory needs. But the reality is there isn't an adult walking the planet that isn't a big overgrown kid and doesn't still have sensory needs. And so this little guy was named by one of our staff. He's called Coco Loco, and he is full of rice. And so he is heavy. And so he allows the wearer, so to speak, to stay grounded. It's something called proprioceptive stimulation. So if I need deep touch, this weighted guy allows me to center myself within my environment. So in schools, they use weighted blankets a lot. They use weighted stuffed animals. But it allows an adult, and people come and get the weighted stuffed animals out of my office all the time. Mm-hmm. You'll see them in training. You'll see them, somebody will be sitting at their desk with a weighted stuffed animal on their lap. Because it just allows that sense of grounding. If I can feel where I am in relationship to the rest of what's around me, I have an opportunity to stay grounded and to stay connected rather than disassociating. And it's really to address, for adults, I think a lot of times the tendency we have to disassociate and then numb. The glitter jars, that is my latest funsies moment. Creating glitter jars, because if you are visually stimulated or you have visual sensory needs, this definitely allows you to sit for a moment and have kind of like an adult time in, not a time out, a time in, and just take a moment and watch the glitter settle. And it allows you, again, it's a grounding technique. So I understand where I am in relationship to the physical world around me, which gives me the tools to no longer be in my flight, fight, or freeze brain. And now I have an opportunity. Now I can do the next right thing. So it's continuing to build that scaffolding. And I've talked a lot.
I just want to add with the glitter things, I've noticed it also helps with attention. So people who need to be doing something or saying something instead of like pulling up a phone or in conversation. Like I had that glitter one in our money class the other morning, and it was amazing how focused everybody was in the conversation because they almost had something to look at and focus on with their eyes, so they're not looking at their page or looking at different things and getting distracted. So that was another benefit of the this bunny has lavender in it, so it smells really nice. It's calming. You can heat it up so you can have something warm. I'm a fidgeter, so I like to have little squish balls and I tend to like kind of toss them around and like just pet them and things like that because I like to do something with my hands personally. So that's kind of what these little
I can't wait to see like corporate offices with
Oh my gosh.
big stuffed animals in it.
Or letting people crochet in a meeting. That's another
Yeah.
thing I've been doing there's a lot of research out about knitting, but there's also, it correlates to crocheting. So we allow our staff to crochet during training. We allow them to crochet during our morning meetings. I just read an article, I think it was this morning, about how doing something like that with your hands allows you, sorry, I drank my water too fast. I might burp. Pardon me.
I know.
I know it happens,
That's
but
why
I'm
I had to stop
hydrating.
drinking my soda.
I'm hydrating. So it actually creates this dopamine in your brain because you're completing something, you're creating something. That's using dopamine in a really lovely way. So we talked about the cortisol and the fight or flight chemical and how that takes a long time to dissipate. Well, if you can ground somebody and potentially give them a little bit of dopamine, like I crochet before bed, because I want a little bit of, happy juice in my brain so that when I'm going to bed happy. And that creative process actually helps us to, again, get centered into a place where our body and our brain are actually at an optimal place for learning, for acceptance, potentially boosting our own sense of worthiness. So all of these little things, again, it comes back to that scaffolding that you're building up to say, I actually can do some really hard things. I'm actually going to do some really hard things. And then you get the strength and the courage to actually go out and do it. And it starts with simple, basic things like water, protein, sleep, movement, Coco Loco. I mean, God bless him. He's amazing. A glitter jar. Who knew? And learn to crochet if you haven't, or knit, or like do something with your hands. Make a dog toy. I mean, that's something our ladies do is make a dog toy. It's incredibly grounding.
I have had my own journey in the world of anxiety that I feel like my threads of anxiety collapsed me a lot. And it wasn't really until my doctor asked me about 3.5 years ago, how are you sleeping? How are you eating? And I was like, not that well and on the go. And then she prescribed to me, like she wrote it on a prescription. She's like, I need you to go see this mindfulness coach. And that kind of became my journey into this healing process of these small things, because I probably lived a majority of my life disconnected from myself. And I used busyness to avoid myself. But yeah, that's what she was doing. She's teaching me ways to connect, my mind back into my body. Because my anxiety it pushes all my thoughts out here, and I live out here in all this made up stuff. And and now that I've like gone through this process for myself and done some work on it, got a little medication.
God bless the medication.
Yeah, like 3 months ago, and I love it. Little low dose, take the edge off.
Yeah.
But it also, what I'm trying to say is, it has created so much sympathy for the women that I work with. And like,
It's empathy, actually.
Empathy. Yeah. But this is part of probably why I'm so passionate about this Rethreaded process, because I know there's people that go to work every day and are crippled by anxiety and don't have tools. And sometimes it's as simple as looking at, are you sleeping? Are you eating? Are you drinking? And those are like 3 great places to start for anyone listening to this. How much water do you drink a day? I guarantee you a majority of people are not drinking enough water. Are you eating protein at every meal and getting enough protein? Do you put protein in your snack? I mean, just little things that make a huge difference in the regulation of ourselves. We used to have ladies drink energy drinks all the time. And now I don't think anyone does.
I see it occasionally.
A little bit.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah.
A little bit.
Yeah.
I think I look at it as if I start to see too many energy drinks in the building, I feel like I have failed somewhat in my soapbox speaking. And I feel like, I need to re-up my soapboxing, because when we first started talking about water and we were really on top of that conversation, it dropped. I mean, I had one woman at one point who said, I drink 2 pots of coffee before I get to work in the morning. I'm like, no wonder you're vibrating all over the room. Like, I get it. I would be too. And as the coffee dropped off and as the energy drinks dropped off and as the soda dropped off, it was like, oh, I'm a different person. We have one lady right now who just said, I've just like, she would drink a lot of different drinks, and you start like looking at the nutritional value, and the amount of sugar, fats, and calories she was getting in a day was astronomical just from what she was drinking. And she said, I just switched over to water. I'm like, do I get to say I told you so now? Because she's like, I feel so much better. And literally you can see her skin, her eyes, her attitude, her sense of accomplishment just because of water. Like, what a huge, easy win to put into your life. Like, it's free, you guys. It's free. Let's drink more water.
And it's funny because sometimes when I think about companies, they want to help their employees be better. And sometimes it can become very complicated. But really, you can start with simple things like water. I'm going too far, but the P chart we have.
No, it's not too far.
We've been complimented that we have the P chart.
It's a great thing. It's a great. So for those of you who don't know, when we were first exposed to trust-based relational intervention, known as TBRI, one of the things that they encourage for children is they do encourage this incremental change of water, protein, sleep, movement. And for children, they put the chart up, and it's like a stoplight, and it has 3 different variant gradients of yellow. And you can Google it, unless your Google's broken. It's just all I sometimes say. Google it and put it up in your bathroom, because it's just a really good reminder to say, where am I at? I mean, you can get the water bottles
like on a certain part, like the top is like, if it's this yellow, you need to go drink some water.
You go drink some water. And we've also seen it happen when staff have come to us really dysregulated or upset, for somebody who doesn't know that term. The first question I'll ask is, how much water have you had today? How much caffeine have you had today? When was the last time you ate? What did you eat? And it was a number of years ago, but a staff member came and they were, I'm going to just say I was concerned. I was pretty concerned. And after asking those questions, I knew right away this individual needed at least 16 ounces of water in the next half an hour. And this person needed food. So I went and got food, and I went and got water, and I just sat. We didn't talk. We just sat. Just meet your need. Just meet your need. And it took a long time. It probably took a good 30 minutes for this individual to actually have the language skills to be able to tell us what was going on. And they were horribly dehydrated and had only caffeine in their system, had no food in their system. You will lose your ability to have cognizant, cohesive language when you let yourself get to that state.
So all of you listening out there, and you have troubled employees,
take away the soda and put in water.
But it's a legit question. And if you want the most out of your employees, like it's great questions. How much water have you drank today? What have you eaten? Yeah.
Well, I think the beautiful thing about that is it separates the behavior from the person, which we talk a lot about. Mm-hmm. So here's my my dog, sliding in with my dog story here, is when she's acting up or barking or doing something that we might find annoying, we run through the list. Did she eat yet? Is it time to eat? Has somebody taken her out? Does she need to go to the bathroom to be kosher on this? Does she need exercise? Like you run through the list, which feels natural when you're talking about a dog. But we're the same things. And so sometimes the behavior that we're seeing, the state of the person that we're seeing, really has nothing to do with their character, who they are, their intentions, their work ethic, any of that stuff. It has to do with meeting the basic needs. And that's why basic needs is such a big part when you're talking about the hierarchy, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Like, you have to start there. And if you can see that as a need, if you can be intentional about those things, you can now address the behavior. You can now address and meet the person where they're at instead of assuming that's who they are.
And I think our society generally tells us that it's okay to have needs when you're a baby. It's okay to have needs up until about 18 or so. And then 18 hits and something kicks in our society and basically says, suck it up, buttercup. You better just stand and deliver what we as a society need you to deliver, and then it gets exploited, in a trauma situation or in, dysfunctional, toxic relationships. And pretty soon having a basic need is considered shameful, or it's just a non-starter. We're not gonna consider the basic needs that we have. Just do more, just be more, just achieve more. And you can't do that unless you acknowledge your own humanity. And newsflash, your own humanity is crying out for attention about every 2 hours. And so best we acknowledge that so that we can do the things that we need to do.
I feel like I need a snack.
I know, samesies. I actually have some blueberries in my bag sitting down there, and I'm really starting to think about them.
I know. I was like, oh, should have had a snack. I need Kyra, your job next time. I need a snack between podcasts. Okay. This is a personal question now. I'm going to ask each of you. Out of time, that is the ability to sit with your thread, purpose, vision, community, and openness, which thread do you struggle, which aspect do you struggle with the most? And how does it manifest in your life?
Struggle with in life in general, or with our roles?
In life in
work?
general, personal.
Okay.
Yeah. Like, for example, mine is time. Everybody knows it.
I think for me, it's community. I think I am definitely at my core one of those people who is just do more, just achieve more, just tough it out. That was definitely my, family of origin deficit. And so I think what happened to me during COVID was combined with my introversion, it was almost like a free pass to say, I'm not going to make the effort to be in community with others. And it was a conscious, subconscious decision. And I think I'm still trying to peel myself out of that and acknowledge that, my own worthiness for community is there, and to, kind of advocate for myself in the sense of having more community in my life. I think there's a lot to be said for the community that you build around yourself. And when something takes that away from you, how do you intentionally and actively rebuild that? Because it's not an easy thing to do, especially as a grown up. I mean, in my 50s, how am I going to walk up to somebody and go, hey, do you want to be friends? And at the end of the day, I'm still just a big kid who really wants to go play on the slide with somebody who wants to play on the slide too. Doesn't matter how old you are. But now I also have grandchildren, so that is a bonus because now I get to play. But I probably need grown-up friends too.
So what is community, when you say that, what does community mean to you?
I think, oh gosh, we don't have enough time. I mean, we literally don't have enough time. There's so much about community. It's people acknowledging you for where you're at and who you are and supporting you in that journey of worthiness. And I think we all need people around us who are willing to champion our own worthiness. Because let's be honest, we can get healthy and healthier and advocate for our own worthiness, but there's always going to be a time when we need somebody who's willing to advocate with us and alongside of us for our own worthiness. And to me, that's a big component of community.
All right, Giselle.
I think mine might be like this weird mix of purpose and vision, where I'm at this point where I'm happy and I'm at a place where a lot of my dreams have come true. And that's a really scary place to be. And so on top of that, I tend to want to do more and try to set those expectations on myself. And so sometimes okay, well, I'm here, now what? And then I kind of struggle with well, am I doing it to the best? I should be doing more, or how do I do this better? Or just keep going in kind of that cycle. And so I kind of struggle with balancing enjoying where I'm at, feeling, understanding, and being proud of the purpose that I've been giving, and trying to continue to fulfill that to the best of my ability. But yet being able to see how can that expand? Like, how can my sphere grow? How can I grow for our ladies, grow with our ladies? How can I grow outside of work, in my community, in other areas, and things like that? And so, and the internal battle there is the high expectation versus the realistic energy levels, the reality of time, the reality of responsibility. And so I think that's where I would say overall in general, I still kind of struggle with, where I'm like, I'm almost uncomfortable in my joy and in my sense of accomplishment, in my happiness. I'd been praying a prayer for a really long time, and it wasn't until I got to the time where I like thanked God for where I was that then that prayer got answered. And it was like such an eye-opener to me, where I was like, I need to just learn how to sit in my joy. I need to learn to sit in my purpose. I need to learn to be okay in the vision that I have right now. And that's still really hard, like I have that experience and I can be reminded of that experience. And it's still a day-to-day struggle of like, oh, I'm not doing enough, or I don't know enough, or why did I not like go work out today? Or like, am I actually doing the best in my job and actually helping the ladies in the best way possible? And so it's just kind of a daily reassuring myself and struggling with how do I continue to move forward.
Good. All right. If we have, well, we're going to have lots of listeners, but we have our listeners who are probably not in a similar environment as Rethreaded, business environment, maybe bosses, moms, whatever they're doing in life. What would be your advice from your experience at Rethreaded to help them through their Rethreaded process? Like, what's your nugget of wisdom you want to drop before we end the show?
I think I would say to dig into the small moments, celebrate the good ones, feel the uncomfortable ones, face the fearful ones. But it's in those small moments that you'll get the big moments. And so just be intentional and just dig in.
Do the next right thing.
Do the next right thing. It doesn't have to be easy to be good. There's so many good things that are really, really stinking hard. And you can have even gratitude and joy in that difficulty. You don't go out and lift weights because it's fun and easy. You go out and lift weights because it's hard and you want to be stronger. Don't be afraid to lift the weight. And be thankful that you have the muscles to lift the weight so that you can get stronger and do it all over again.
Well, thank you all for what you bring to the table. And thank you for creating space to hold our women so well. And not just women, holding us at Rethreaded so well.
Yeah. Thanks for having us.
Yeah. Good job.